I'd like to call this meeting of the Board of Education for the School District of Baraboo in order for Monday, October the 27th, 2014, with roll call. Mr. Cummings.
Here.
Mr. McNevin.
Here.
Mr. Meering.
Here.
Mr. Mortimer.
Here.
Ms. Riley is not with us. Mr. Vedro.
Here.
And Vodak here. Continue with the pledge. The flag is behind the counter. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes of the October the 13th, 2014 meeting as printed.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Vedro, seconded by Cummings. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Minutes thus approved. Brings us to correspondence. I think all board members received some correspondence in regards to agenda items tonight. Mr. Meering pointed out to me that he received one, so I'm going to let him.
Yeah, I
Pass along.
received one regarding the retirement benefit from Victoria Huygen, and so I'm submitting that into the record.
Any administrative correspondence?
None tonight.
Hearing none, moves us to public viewpoints. I have 6 people that have expressed a desire to speak at public viewpoints. So I'll start with the first on the list, Dave Hasley.
Actually, I'm not here as myself. Just one of the voices expressing a general statement from the BEA. My name is Dave Hasley, and I've been here since 1989, and I teach at the high school. Good evening. Tonight, unfortunately, the board faces another turning point in its ongoing relationship with the staff of the Baraboo School District. Over the summer, a positive step was taken when many individuals from the BEA, the administrative team, and the school board convened to discuss how, as a group of professionals working together toward the betterment of our students, this positive relationship could be restored. Trust was unanimously selected as a key area of focus. In fact, after that meeting, Dr. Ritzenthaler shared a document with all district stakeholders that reflected this new, agreed-upon focus. We left that meeting with a real hope for a cooperative environment in 2014-15. The idea of working together, the cooperative engagement that Mr. Vedro writes about in his April 2014 article, is something that the BEA currently feels is little more than a talking point. Staff is facing a harsh change to their post-employment benefits that the board will discuss and vote on already this evening. The BEA had an opportunity to meet with Dr. Ritzenthaler and Mr. Hubble to discuss initial questions. However, no full opportunity was made available to meet with the school board, whose members have the vote. Ultimately, the decision facing you tonight will have powerful and long-lasting ramifications for each and every employee in this district. Clearly, this has been a missed opportunity for cooperative engagement.
One of the pieces of Act 10.
Could you for the record state your name? please?
Shelley Mordini,
Thank you.
teacher at the high school. One of the pieces of Act 10 that many talking heads trumpet is the ability of the school boards to make sound financial decisions without the interference of collective bargaining. Let's face it, Act 10 allows you to make these decisions without any input at all. But it is the best practice in a collective environment. As Dr. Ritzenthaler states in Mr. Vedro's article, we are sitting around the table together to have an important conversation. Yet with something as important as agreed upon post-employment benefits, no collaborative engagement has taken place.
I'm Holly Ford. I've been here since 1980. Can you hear me okay on that? The BEA is well aware of the financial restraints the district faces, but the staff did not cause this shortfall. Poor policy decisions by lawmakers and the gutting of public funding for the work we all love is the root cause. Nevertheless, it seems as though every penny that the district has been shorted has been made up on the backs of those who work with students every day. From the erosion in insurance benefits a consistent increase in an already unmanageable workload, to changing post-employment benefits, this constant barrage of changes is taking a toll on the morale of this district's stellar staff.
I'm Gary Frisch. I've been a teacher here since 1991. Mr. Vedro states in his article that one of the attributes of cooperative engagement is honoring the rice bowls or the economic parts of the job. His argument is that no one should ever go backward in compensation. Everyone should be made as whole as possible. Of course, some would argue that this change isn't going backward in compensation because many employees haven't reached retirement age. However, the argument can also be made that our post-employment benefit and insurance was negotiated in order to keep compensation manageable for previous school boards. We understand that the board's decision to act quickly is, in part, for the sake of members who face the decision of entering into post-employment life. However, we are also under the impression that this information was presented to a committee well before being scheduled to the full board. Why was there such a gap in making it public? Why not talk over several months with the 300 or so affected by this? Where was the cooperative engagement in this process? These are important questions, and not having them answered puts everyone in an uncomfortable situation.
I'm Maureen Bula, and I've taught in the Baraboo School District for 30 years. This is my 31st year here. Time and again, teachers are told that they're doing a great job and that they're respected for what they offer to the education of Baraboo students. Sadly, this decision flies in the face of that and will force quality educators who still have a lot to give their students only one option: retirement. Teachers realize that this profession is about being a role model and making long-lasting difference to our community. Regrettably, these fine mentors, now facing a career decision, will no longer be able to impact the growing numbers of new teachers in Baraboo, not to mention future students. These are years and years of experience that cannot be recreated.
I'm Corey King. I've taught in the district since 1998. If you look around, you will see many BEA members at this meeting. This gathering tonight represents how professional educators in the Baraboo School District feel about their place in the decision-making process. We are on the outside looking in. All we continue to ask is that our voices are, at minimum, heard. Mr. Vedro appropriately comments at the end of his article that we are still occasionally hostage to our past habits, to our habits and our past. The BEA had hoped after this summer that the habits of the past were gone. However, the board's actions tonight will send a message to the district staff about its real investment in cooperative engagement. Sincerely, the Baraboo Education Association.
Is there any further public viewpoint? Is there any further public viewpoint? Any further public viewpoint? Hearing none, I'd like to move on to the portion of the agenda entitled Recognition. And we have with us tonight the Jack Young Middle School Choir, some students, and the choir director. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ritzenthaler.
We're really proud tonight to have Harmony Klingmeyer here from the middle school, and some of the students, can you stand for us, who performed at the annual Gifted and Talented Conference up in the Dells, and many of us had the opportunity to hear them, and we were so proud of how poised you all were in that huge conference room with all of those people there, and just really how talented you all are. And I think that's the first time that we've had a group perform at a regional conference like that. And so I'd like to give Harmony and students a chance just to comment on your experience, or if there's anything that you'd like to share with us tonight about that.
I'm Hope Brandhagen, part of the choir today. I thought it was really great to have the experience to perform in the music conference at Kalahari, because it was cool to have representatives from different towns and school districts to come just to see us perform and give us their time. And yeah, that was a really cool opportunity.
I'm Joshua Hackbarth, also member of the choir TI. It was really rough beforehand. Some of the harmonies weren't working out. But we went to the concert and everything just fell together so perfectly. Astounding, I think, most of the people there. I think, definitely the whole choir, me included. Yeah, everything just fell together, went real smoothly. We left holding our heads up high. I mean, we were proud of what we had done there.
Joshua, I was there. It felt to me like it was falling together. I was very impressed. You guys did a great job, all of you.
I'm Lauren Little Soldier, part of the choir TI. At first, it was kind of difficult for all of us to learn the notes at first, but when we all came together at the conference in the Dells, it was actually really good to actually hear all of us, perform really well and be able to sing correct notes really well. So
I neglected to mention that the students in front of you had solo parts, if you can imagine. I mean, it's scary enough to get up with a group, but then you had to kind of be out there on your own. But the response from people that were at the conference was just fantastic.
Well, as the choir director of this incredible group of young people, I just have to say I'm so very proud of them. And I also want to say that I feel very privileged to work in Baraboo. And I love my job. And I'm a little emotional right now, but it's because there is no greater honor than to advance the next generation and to see those lives transformed and to take on meaning before your eyes. There's no greater honor than that, and you have given me that honor, and so I just want to thank you, and I just want to praise this school district, and I want to say that you're doing a good work and you're changing lives and you're giving us the opportunity to do that, so thank you very much.
I forgot to mention that she's very passionate. So we have a certificate of appreciation.
Oh, thank you.
I wish it was more, but just, to honor the work that you are doing with our young vocalists. And again, I couldn't be more proud of the job that you did. It really exceeded the expectations I had, and you only had such a short time to learn all of those pieces, and they were fantastic.
I want, for those of you who weren't there, I just want to say that the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders are singing upper level high school music in the choir TI. Not all the choirs, but choir TI is singing upper level high school music. I challenge them all the time as they pointed out. I ask them to do very difficult things and they take on those challenges, but they're very impressive actually. They're a very impressive group of young people.
And students, just as a reminder of your contributions in representing the Baraboo School District, I have honors for excellence medallions for all of you in T-Bird colors, so hopefully that will be a pleasant reminder of that opportunity that you had. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for sharing with us. Brings us to the point of the agenda entitled Reports. We have with us tonight Kevin Moll, and the board received background information on what the proposed projects could be. And Kevin, I guess what I'd like you to do, however you see fit, is give us the highlights of what the proposal is. As I said, the board does have background on what the two pieces are, so I'll just turn it over to you.
Well, actually, there's more than two pieces. I should really say that, for one thing, I am actually subbing for Harmony on Friday, and it's kind of a tough act to follow, but that's okay. I like the challenges. Now, I think one of the things that maybe should be said was the fact that John gave me a compliment. And I make lots of noise. No, his compliment was sort of a backhanded compliment back in June of 2012. And basically, you know, he said he's glad that the governor put me in the position of retiring after only 31 years of teaching. Because then I had an opportunity to come and work in the Baraboo staff, a long-term sub for Al Berriman Elementary. It's an awesome school. I really enjoyed that. But actually, my career started a long time before that. Back in 1979, I taught in Fairfax, Minnesota. And they said, oh, by the way, you're going to be doing the fall play. And I said, great. You know, I was in a junior high play once. And they said, you're overqualified. Well, that was when I lost most of my hair, you know, pulling it out in big chunks. But, you know, it came really together for every show that I did. And actually, I got shared with another school that was 10 miles away. And they said, hey, you do the fall play for Fairfax. Can you do the spring play for us? And I basically got into a mode of doing whatever I could because, I mean, kids are really important. And even if we, you know, as teachers, you know, feel a little bit neglected or put out and stuff like that, you know, we do what we can do. Over the last couple of years, I worked on a maquette for the Baraboo Thunderbird, okay? Many of you saw when I was set up back in May in the creation of this maquette. In creating that maquette, I basically decided, you know, I'd really like to build a big one, 10 to 12 feet tall, with a wingspan of 20 feet. And then over the summer on working on that, I came to realize, you know what, that's a little bit beyond my capabilities to do that. See, my instruction in welding probably took about a half hour back in the mid-1970s. It was in a welding, it was in a, not a welding class, it was in an art class. The instructor said, here, these are kind of what you do and these are the settings. Well, over this summer, Paul Hilke and his wife came to my booth and his wife said, hey, Paul's actually teaching an MATC class here at Baraboo High School. You should probably come by and see it. And Paul kind of, yeah, come by and see it. Well, I've been, you know, going into there and learning some things about, you know, this project, and basically came to the conclusion that the best thing for me to do would be to do two of these. One is going to be, you know, the ultimate goal is to create the 10 to 12 foot tall one, which I really hope to install here someplace at the Baraboo High School grounds a year from now, okay? And that would be 10 to 12 feet tall with a wingspan of 20 feet, okay? In working on this project, I'm kind of, you know, learning some more things about welding. And basically, this is sort of an intermediate before what I would like to create and install for Al Berriman Elementary next May, okay? Now this is a half-scale version of that half-scale version. So it's a quarter-scale version of that. Now you could probably look at this and you could say there's a lot of things that have already changed from that version to this one. There's still a lot more things that do really need to be changed. And I'm working on this completely. Sometimes I'm working on it at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when I wake up and say, you know what, I really got to do this that way. This is going to be a project it's going to consume me until I install the one at Al Berryman Elementary, and then until I install the one here at the high school. Now, you're seeing me actually screw this into this, and you might say, is the big one going to get screwed into there? No, but this is telling me some things about the process. And if you just look at this from what it is right now, you can look at this and you can see even a couple of fairly major changes, at least that are major to me. Now, when I talked to John, as far as my idea, we talked about a number of things, and some of those things are already incorporated into what's going on here. Now, actually, to get it to this point, I did spend quite a few hours on this over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday out at my studio. So, there's obviously, there are these points that are going to be then tied down. This line that's on the Baraboo Thunderbird, has been changed into this, which is a lot stronger. It's a lot better. There is some connections that are going on here that do need some work yet, but this is the evolution of the process. Now, I will be, talking to a number of people, and I will be creating the funding needs for this. Right now, from the middle of September until about the middle of May, when I propose that the Al Berryman Elementary piece is going to get completed, that's approximately 35 weeks. Now, there is a lot of time. I do some substitute teaching. I substitute taught today at the middle school, and I'll be subbing at the middle school again on Friday. But again, there's time that's taken away from this. So what I'm looking to do, I guess what I'm looking for your approval, is to start working on the fundraising for this. And I'm going to be talking to individuals, patrons of mine, actually collectors of my work, and hopefully that they would be looking at funding part of this. And for the intermediate piece, the Al Berryman Elementary, I'm looking at about $3,500, which would turn out to be $100 a week from that middle of September time until the middle of May. And that would be about half of what I would expect to get on a regular 8-hour day for once a week. So I'm looking at providing a good deal, because again, I'm learning about this. Now, one of the things that I mentioned to Crystal was the fact that those of you that play golf, oftentimes when you get onto the green, if you get onto the green and there's somebody that's behind you, they get the putt before you, and you can kind of go to school on their putt. Well, what I'm doing is I'm going to school, elementary school, to work on the smaller version that is going to be 5 to 6 feet tall with about a 10-foot wingspan. So you can see that that's approximately, this is approximately half size of that. So there's a lot of things that, again, I still need to figure out for this larger one. Things are pretty much coming together as far as creating the smaller version, which is something that is within the size that I've actually created before. So
I have a quick question, and again, it looks really cool, and again, I can see a lot of other things with our welding and other classes, art and so forth. Could just being somehow just even observing the process. But this is, you're putting this in an elementary school. Kids love crawling on stuff.
Yep, that's what John mentioned too.
Is there going to be a safety issue that we might have to consider with this?
Well, right now, you know, John was sort of concerned about the jagged edges that are here.
Yeah.
Those really are not going, they're not going to be there, because what I'm doing is I'm doing a little bit of a different type of a texture that's on here. There's not going to be any points that you see there. They're going to be, again, dealt with what it is here. There's not going to be the parts that are here put into there. There is, you know, I guess there's always an element with regard to, you know, things that are being climbed on. One of the things that is going to also be taking place is the, basically we're talking about, you know, every kid is going to have an involvement in this, and there's going to be two things. Number one is that there is going to be a cement base that's going to be for this. And I do some single wire sculptures, and we want to kind of incorporate some small little wire sculptures into actually the cement. But then for painting, actually it's going to be painted by kids, you know, getting some colors and putting some of that on there.
Yeah.
There's not going to be anything that's going to be, as far as an intrinsic hazard. It could be considered that there would be a hazard if these were left there like that. But again, they are going to be treated like this.
Can you point to any other, in particular, school districts that have sculptures, not obviously of this nature, but that have sculptures that are on display?
I'm sure that there's a number of them. I just,
Or translate that to publicly, that are on display publicly, whether it be at a library or a mall or a government building.
Well, I mean, there's sculptures that are, you know, literally everywhere. I mean, you know, Baraboo itself has a sculpture that's along the river that was donated by Dr. Evermore.
Delaney's.
You know, I've talked to Mike Palm, the mayor, you know, and he would like to see, you know, Baraboo as a destination for people, you know, to see art, and, you know, that would include, you know, sculptures that would be unique. This is obviously a unique form that would be, you know, only to a, you know, it's a Thunderbird. The Thunderbird logo, what I tried to create is not something that necessarily, you know, represents this completely, although I should say that I was commissioned like 1.5 times to create, you know, Baraboo Thunderbird sculptures. A half the time was somebody suggested it, I created it, and then they didn't pay for it. And then I had somebody else that commissioned me for one that they have by the front entrance of their house, which is very different than this one. It's one that would not, you know, lend itself well to a, you know, a public type of a venue. This one, again, I'm you know, creating it so that it doesn't have the issues, you know, with regard to, you know, danger type issues.
Well, I applaud your efforts thus far. I applaud the idea. I just think as a board and as a district, there's two things that we need to cross and dot. Number one is from a physical standpoint, where it would be located in the building, and we've got liability and insurance concerns that we need to address. And secondly, from a physical standpoint, or from a financial standpoint, the fundraising aspect
The
of it.
fundraising, I would be involved in getting, talking to various people and not thinking that you, as a school district, would be responsible for any of that. I would
Receiving it, dispersing it, we wouldn't have to be involved at all?
Well, you'd be involved from the standpoint that I would like to, offer to, people that would be willing to fund this as being able to, send money to the school district for the Baraboo Thunderbird sculpture project, and then that would,
Okay.
come to me.
I'd like to suggest two things. Number one, I'd like to suggest that our finance committee with our business director look at the financial aspect, what the district can and can't do in that regard. Because I don't want to set something up to find out we're running afoul of what we should do from a standpoint of handling the money, so I'd like to make sure that we've got that covered. And secondly, I'd like to have the Buildings and Grounds Committee, through our Buildings and Grounds Director, look at the aspect of the physically where the project would go, and also look at the aspects of the liability and insurance part of it. I mean, I don't want to squelch your idea. I just think that there's a few things that we need to make sure that we have in order before we say, yeah, that looks great, because I would certainly hate to have you spend time, effort, and dedication to a project that next spring we say we can't display it because of this, this, and this. And I would think that, in a timeline fashion, we can certainly try to deal with those aspects. Certainly the financial aspect is going to be pretty black and white. The physical aspect and the liability concerns might be a little bit trickier, but I just think that it would be to our advantage, and certainly to yours, because I don't want to see you spend a ton of time on a project you're very dedicated to find out we've got reservations about where to put it. So I don't know how that affects your timetable. I'm only speaking for myself. I certainly would love to hear from the rest of the board, but
I guess, displaying a piece like this is a tremendous opportunity. It's a lot of, it's a lot of exposure for your work too. How do you accommodate other requests for the same type of display of artwork? I guess that would be something I'd want to know about too. That sounds like a policy committee kind of. Just saying.
No, I mean, I think we have to, I think, obviously, this board can make that decision, but I think we still have to deal with some of the issues that Kevin brings up, which I agree with, is that we have to make sure that those liability concerns are being addressed. And it may be perfectly fine and safe when it's in the final form, but I'm not an expert on that. I'm not a playground equipment expert. But I do know, but I know kids well enough to know it's like, that is really cool and I want to jump all over that. And that's the way they are, and especially in the elementary field. And so that's just something that we have to be aware and cognizant of, is that when we get to that final form, is it in a place where a kid can crawl on it? And if there is, unless it's way up on top of the building or something, then what will happen if a kid does crawl on it? What is the worst case scenario? And that's where obviously we have to deal with it, and is there an insurance and liability issue that may be presented? So I think, again, not that we're squelching it, but I think we have to at least get some more information on it too.
And you're thinking bright, vibrant colors.
Well,
and the reason why I ask is
okay.
an elementary environment is, it's the Nighthawks, first of all, right? And so, and we've got a caricature as our school logo. I don't want to say it's menacing, but I want to make sure that it's appropriate for the audience.
Well, from the Nighthawks are what, black and yellow, basically? Black and yellow. All right. I would also be including some other colors into that, as far as some undercoats that would. Kids ask me what my favorite color is. I say, yeah, all of them. And I would like to, get kids to be able to, know that, okay, our class, we put on that color, or, our grade put on this color. And they would have, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, black, and white. Probably with the finishing up colors being, yellow, black, and white, which would then, kind of tie it all together. We would talk about continuity. We'd also talk about, respect. So therefore, hopefully we could probably, squelch, a lot of the desire to crawl upon this. Talking about, okay, we're part of this project, we don't, that's not what we do with this. So I think, it can be a learning experience as far as, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Not that it's never going to happen, but again, it's something that, we can, I think, deal with it from the standpoint of it being handled and being part of the educational experience.
Any other comments from the board? Questions? Oh, Kevin?
That's
Does
what
that-
you said, there's a lot of questions to be answered yet, isn't there?
Well, I believe there are. I just, if he's looking for direction, I think that we need to spend a little bit more time talking about it. From a time standpoint, what does that mean? I think within the next couple BG&T meetings, or, we can try and put some information together, certainly keep you in the loop as to where we are. What we found out, maybe we'll have some more questions of you. And certainly we have your information, we get a hold of you, find you at Al Bierman or whatever, and ask you. And if there's something that you feel after the meeting tonight that would have been beneficial to share, you can certainly forward it to John or to Crystal and share it with the rest of the board.
Yeah, and I feel very comfortable about talking to both John and Crystal, and I have talked to them numerous times about this already. And again, I think it would be a good project for both Al Bierman and then also Al Bierman Elementary, but then also for the high school. We've talked about some various locations here at the high school, where this could be located. So, yeah, I think that there's lots of possibilities. I look forward to the opportunity to work with you about this.
Well, I appreciate your time.
I have one question.
Sure.
Did you say you're gonna handle all of the fundraising, or are there gonna be any monies coming out of the school district for this project?
I don't foresee that there would be, no, I would not plan on any money coming from out of the school district. I don't think that it would be appropriate to expect that the school district would be paying for this, simply because there's a lot of challenges with the school district, just paying for what needs to be done. This would be something that I would be working at and developing the funding for that. And I would, hope to be able to tell the patrons that I'm talking to, saying that, if you make a donation to the Baraboo School District under the Baraboo Thunderbird Sculpture Project, the money would be put into a pool where, I would be able to, start to draw some money out of there. But again, it would be tax deductible for the people that are, making that, investment. That's what I'd be looking for. For the larger project, I would be looking at creating more of like a Kickstarter type of a thing, and I think that we could, get the fundraising from a larger area, but again, would be looking to be basically the same type of a thing. Yes?
In terms of safety issues, I would assume there would be some best practices, some pedestals that would lift these high enough and be in a shape where young people, for example, couldn't reach them. And I would also assume that there are best practices where public institutions have had various kinds of artwork made available, and that both legalities, liabilities, and also all of those other issues that we must consider have been vetted. And so I would ask you, as well as ask our committees, to be aware that this is not a new thing. and there probably are best practices and guides for us to look at so that we can help guide you and guide ourselves in terms of what we might recommend if we were to move forward, how we were to move forward to answer the liability issues, the safety issues, so that these kinds of projects could come to fruition.
Okay, any further comments, questions? Appreciate your time.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Kevin.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yep, thank you for the demonstration and appreciate it. Brings us to the portion of the agenda entitled Continuous School Improvement, 2014-15 School Learning Objectives and Strategic Planning Goals. We're going to hear from our principals, and for that intro, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ritzenfeller.
Do we have a
Molly's
lineup?
starting.
Molly's going to kick it off. All right.
I'd be happy to. I think Baraboo is very fortunate to be a district that has a lot of data, and we are becoming more and more proficient at using that data. And eSchool has decided to continue to work with all of our students. We certainly want all of them to grow and reach their maximum potential. And our focus is going to be on those students right now that are not succeeding at grade level and are at the 10% below the national normed average. So we're looking to raise those kids to the next step up, and for those students that are in the step above that, to raise them up. We will be using a literacy lens for measuring these students' progress, and we will also be using our MAP and our Ames data. That would be our school goal. We also have a goal relating to behavior, which is PBIS, and for that goal, we will continue to monitor the students' behavior through the program that we have in place. Students, when they have an infraction or make a misstep, they can get a minor report or a major report. The major reports we call ODRs, Offense Discipline Referrals. So we're hoping 90% of our population will have 2 or fewer major office referrals. And finally, at East, our community outreach goal would be to have 100% of our kindergarten through 5th grade classrooms have a connection with a business or a partner within the community, invite them into our school, or perhaps even connect with them in a manner outside, maybe Skype, maybe go to their business for a service learning. And those are our 3 goals at East.
Thank you.
Chris Olson.
All right. I have a couple of friends, we'll be quick, but I got a couple of friends that are gonna present with me real quick. Deb Benson, Angie Valley here with our 4K team. And one of you wanna jump in there with the first one?
Sure, our academic goal is for at least 95% of the BELC students, will score within the PALS summed range of 47 to 77 by the spring of 2015. All BELC students will increase their PALS summed score by at least 25 points from the fall of 2014 to the spring of 2015. Or, of course, those other students who are going to reach the maximum of 100 to 110 points on the PALS assessment in the spring of 2015.
We're a unique animal with the BELC students because we really only have one terrific data source in 4K, which is our PALS state mandated assessment, and we're just finishing that up. So we kind of wrote our goal before we even got a chance to see all of our data. That's just the way the timing has worked out. Angie, do you want to talk about the behavior goal?
Our behavior goal for 2014-2015 is all adult teachers will implement the second step curriculum with fidelity so that students will develop social and emotional skills measured by the BIRs or behavior incident reports, decreasing by 30% from the fall semester to the spring semester in 2014-2015 for the BELC program.
So that relates really nicely to eSchool around PBIS and ODRs, and we have BIRs, which are like a first cousin of the ODRs. So we are working to decrease those, as you can see. And then our community goal for BELC is that we will sustain partnerships with at least 10 community agencies, helping us to have 100% of positive parent contact beyond parent-teacher conferences during the school year. We have a good jump start on that because we partner with so many child care centers, as you know. So those are our goals for BELC. Any questions for the BELC team? It's about half of us right here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and then jumping into West real quick. Our SLO, again, is literacy focused. In the area of reading, at least 90% of our West kindergarten students will meet or exceed the benchmark goals. And we're also looking at all of our students growing at least 4 levels as well. And we did reach that last year. We had 90% last spring with a different group of kids, obviously. So we're gearing up for a similar type of goal for this year for literacy. And then our Behavior Smart goal is really looking at PBIS and making sure we're doing everything to fidelity. And there's a survey at the end of the year that we are looking at with feedback from staff. We're hoping to have at least 90% PBIS implementation fidelity on that survey. And then also our students that are on check-in and check-out is what the CICO stands for. We're looking for at least 90% of those students to really show terrific progress, which is similar to our numbers last year. So we really think we can attain that. And lastly, for West, our community outreach goal, we're working to support at least 6 different efforts in the community. And also 3 different ways the community, we're working to support, promote at least 3 different ways the community can support West during the course of the year. We're also looking at trying to have 100% of our families to attend at least 2 family outreach events during the school year. So we're trying to reach out to the community and also bring them into the school as much as we can too. Any questions regarding West? Yeah.
Just thank you for commenting on the fact that the goals of last year were acknowledged and were met.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to ensuring the fact that all the resources that are necessary to support the goals that all of you define are in place, so that each year when you report to us on future goals, you can also talk to us about last year's stated goals and how the degree to which they were accomplished, what were the restraining forces that might have interfered, so that we can also continue continuous improvement. And I think it's very important not only that we hear your goals, but we also hear what the resources are that you need to accomplish those goals and what you learned from your experience in trying to accomplish the goals of the previous year where you succeeded and where there were other challenges. Thank you.
Yeah, Chris, I have one question, and again, you're on the docket, so I'm not gonna ask this question, but I'm sure, I'll wait for your answer. But these SLOs, when you're talking about a school learning objective, these are the same SLOs that our teachers are going to have when they're doing their educator effectiveness, or are they gonna be different?
They're tied to this SLO, but they're not necessarily the same.
They're not necessarily the same, but they're probably related in a lot of ways.
They support it.
Okay, they support your SLOs.
Yep.
So it's not that they're gonna be working on something that's totally not related to what
Right.
you have.
Right, am I saying that right, Lori?
Yep.
Yeah. So
Our
very
arrows
much
are going in the
connected.
same direction.
Good. I don't wanna have you going on one thing and them working on something else when we all, if this is what's important, then, and it is, that they're all working on the same thing.
And we've had some great PLC time provided where we were all working in teams across this building from the whole school district, working on just what you're talking about, Doug, where we're really trying to make sure all of the teachers' SLOs and the building SLOs are connected and supporting one another. And just speaking for Weston Belk, I feel like we're definitely doing that, and I'm guessing everybody else is too.
Yeah, it's a major task, but we don't wanna create 2 tasks when they should be all related and going, as you're saying, the arrows in the same direction.
I think the teachers really like that too, and it's a little hard for some, I think, because everybody has a different role. So
Yeah.
not everybody lends itself perfectly to.
No,
you know.
we all have our own roles,
Right.
but they're all related, and they all tie into the same goal.
Yep, we're trying to be connected for sure.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, John Blazinski's up next.
Looking at our data from last year and the beginning of this year, one of the things that we noticed was an area of need in our school building-wide was fluency. Fluency is the rate of higher reading or speed, accuracy of what you're reading, and expression in reading. And looking at that, we had to kind of break it down a little bit, depending on the assessments that we could use to measure that and kind of keep track of that. So I have 3 different ones written here, depending on the grade level. 2nd through 5th grade, I was able to lump together and use what we call an Ames-Webb measure. And that goal reads, 80% of our 2nd through 5th grade students will meet or exceed the 45th percentile on the Ames-Webb measure, national norm benchmark, by the end of the 2014-15 school year. So that's 2nd through 5th grade. And that's something that the measure that Ames-Webb measures we can use with our 2nd through 5th graders. Now, the 1st grade, that doesn't come into play, that measure, until the winter assessment. But I needed to use some fall assessment to have some data to go off of. So what we looked at was nonsense word fluency. So basically words that, they're not really words. The student has to be able to read that word using the word attack skills that they've been taught. So looking at that, 95% of our 1st grade students will meet or exceed the 45th percentile on the same benchmark, Ames-Webb, by the end of the 2014-15 school year. Kindergarten is a different piece. Kindergarten, again, we don't have a measurement for that. So what we did is we went to Fontes and Pinnell. And Fontes and Pinnell, we have different benchmarks where kids are supposed to be at. And by the end of kindergarten, students need to be at a level D in their reading using this Fontes and Pinnell assessment. To get to level D, they have to have fluency. So they can get to level C, but without the proper fluency, they can't take that next step. So that's what we're going to use for our benchmark. So 90% of our kindergarten students will meet or exceed level D on the Fontes and Pinnell measure by the end of the 2014-15 school year. So theoretically, we're addressing all the grade levels in the students, and our teachers are able to focus on those areas. So those are our goals for literature. Behavior goal, kind of the same goal we had last year, and we did not meet our goal last year at all. We bombed it looking at our data. We addressed it, but we didn't have the success we were looking for. Just being honest with you. So this year, we're doing the same thing and trying to come at it a little bit differently. But in the end, by the end of the 2014-15 school year, using Swiss referrals, all forms of defiance will decrease. Defiance was our area of need by 25% compared to the 2013-14 school year. Last year, we had 851 referrals for defiance. If you don't know, that's a lot. And it felt like we had 851 referrals for defiance. The cool part right now is looking at our data, we're actually doing very well in meeting that goal for this year.
Where are you at right now?
Number-wise, I'm not too sure about that. When we compare from the last year's, the first 2 months to this year, we are significantly below at this point already.
Okay.
That could now change a little bit, so I'm knocking on wood. But that's our goal for right now. We're going to be having some success. Community goal for the 2014-15 school year, able to introduce a minimum of 3 parent education opportunities in addition to our existing family fun events while strengthening our community connections and parent involvement. So what we've done is sent out a survey saying, hey, what are some of the things that you would like us to work with you on with our families or whatnot, and helping increase that understanding of things that are taking place, like homework help is one area that came up. Last year we did a thing on bullying. So using that information from that survey and doing some PD with our families in that. So trying to get that community connection. That's what Alberman has. Any questions? Good.
Great. More freedom, Kathy.
All right, looking at my SLO, it probably looks kind of complicated because I divided it up by grade levels, but it's really very similar to what Molly was saying about we were looking at, the kids in the reds and yellows, the tier 2s and tier 3s, and I was very specific with how many students out of the number that were below the 50th percentile. So my goal really is the 80% of those 65 students that are below the 50th percentile is what I'm looking at making gains. But I did divide it up by grade level, kind of like what John said. When you're looking at kindergarten, they have 4 different measures that we're using on Ames-Webb. And 1st grade has 2. They have similar to what kindergarten has, and then with the Ames-Webb, they also have the winter and the end of the year. So I was comparing basically the norms for what they took now and compared that to hopefully what they'll do in the winter. So that's why first grade has both of them. They have currently below the 50th percentile on lettering fluency, will score 97 or above on the RCBM. So I'm comparing those two. And then second through 5th grade, it's all that same, it's that fluency test. It's a 1-minute fluency test that helps with comprehension and fluency. So that is the SLO for literacy. My behavior SMART goal, again, is about PBIS. Last year, we focused on playground. We had 90% of our students would have 1 or fewer referrals on playground. We were around the 85%. So we decided what we were gonna do is just go with our tier 1 PBIS, which is, you know, the entire school, in all of our areas, which would be, you know, the classroom, the hallways, the playground, lunchroom. So we took all of our domains instead of just playground, and we're looking at 90% of North Freedom students will have 2 or fewer ODRs within the last trimester. And community, we last year we did 6 focus activities with our community and parents, and we have bumped that up to 8 different activities. We were trying for 1 a month, but we weren't sure if there's a couple of those holidays that kind of would get in our way, so that's what we decided. Yes?
Just a broad question to all of you, honoring all of the work that you do. You know, my great concerns have to do with what the data teaches us that isn't really in the data. It's the larger causes over which we probably have very little control. And so the data that's reported is basically what we've been able to accomplish. Thank you, John, for sharing that no matter what we did, it didn't work. I think those are the really important things also that we have to look at. And we talk about high stakes testing, we talk about all the data that we're trying to gather to give us some direction and guidance. I just want to also encourage us to look back, lean back, get a larger view, because the data tends to drive us down. And more often than not, I think it's the larger view that's important, and some of that we have no control over. Or at least we may think we have no control over. But it does not mean that we should not try to assess what that is and take our focus there if that is the 20% that will do the 80. Thank you.
Nick?
Something that's pretty unique, the district's just starting to utilize, and our teachers are utilizing it too, is a program called EduClimber. And so at the elementary level at least, we have a number of assessments, and we used to be that we would have to look at this assessment in this window and this assessment in this window and various other windows. It made it hard to figure out the big picture. As in, you know, now we're able to go in and we can get all of our assessments in one little window, and it's easy to kind of see common trends as we go across. And as you notice, all of our SLOs are focused on literacy for our academic SLOs. John talked about how at Al Bierman it was easy to notice that fluency was a spot that they needed to focus on. Last year, we thought vocabulary for our building was an area we needed to focus on. We improved that, we did quite well. We actually changed our goal midway through the year and increased it. This year, when we're looking at the data and being able to use that program called EduClimber, it was evident that there wasn't that one thing. There wasn't vocabulary, there wasn't fluency, it was different at each grade level, it was different in each classroom. So it was more of focusing on a core issue. So, and I'm not even going to call it an issue, that's just what we wanted to continue on focusing, the things that we're doing and doing it really well. And then also looking at the populations of students where maybe we struggle moving them the most.
And so that was students just like with East's goal that fell below the 10th percentile and also the 24th percentile. And so that's specifically what the goal focuses on, but for the academic goal at GLW, it's more about the action steps that we're doing. And for that, it's focused intervention structure. Mapping out professional development for our staff during staff meeting with a focus on literacy, working with both the staff and instructional coaches, literacy coaches to figure that out. Me, specifically meeting with the literacy coaches every 2 weeks to look at data. And then offering instructional rounds again for our staff to be able to go into other classrooms and look at targeted instructional practices in the area of literacy. These are all things that we're already doing, but we're going to continue to do and try to do well. I really wanted to focus on not putting more rocks in the bucket, per se, this year, and just taking those things we're doing and doing it well. And I think that's how we're planning on moving kids. So that's the academic goal. For the behavioral goal, we decided that we were going to use targeted school-wide PBIS celebrations. We were going to increase that from 2 to 6. And now what is a targeted PBIS celebration? Last year, we had the same thing. We have ODRs, office discipline referrals, and we noticed, wow, we have this huge problem in the lunchroom. We have some disrespect going on there, and it's an area we really need to focus on. So we did a PBIS celebration where staff would recognize the positive behaviors and reteach the positive behaviors that are going on in the lunchroom. Students would get a little coupon for using positive behaviors. They put in a big bucket, and they worked towards music in the lunchroom. They were so motivated by it, and we saw a direct correlation to our ODR data. We decided to start to look at our data more often, and we have a team that comes together and does that. And then create those targeted PBIS celebrations for the different areas that we need to focus on. And we have our first one coming up that's going to start in November. And then for community outreach goal, if you were at the strategic plan meeting, I was there and I did a little slideshow and I talked about our service learning projects that we did last year, and I do believe, for us, we're in our infancy stage, still figuring out what does that look like for elementary. Our staff is very, very passionate about it. And so we're going to continue that. Each grade level is going to do one service learning project this year, and they're going to link it to some of the standards that they're working on within their grade level. But also, we're asking them to connect that to the community connection partnership. So we're asking them to take that community connection person that comes to their classroom and see if they can also help out with the service learning project to connect those two pieces. And already, staff have to have their project idea turned into me by the 31st, and almost every grade level already has it turned in, and it's something, again, that they're very passionate about, so that's nice that the strategic plan allows us to highlight that and focus on that.
At the middle school, our academic goal is that students in grades 6 through 8 will demonstrate an average increase in our math reading scores by increments of 9, 7, and 6 points respectively between fall 2014 and spring 2015. What we did was we went back and looked at the last 2 years of our math data and averaged out what the growth was. And we found out that at the 6th grade level, the average growth was 8.4. In 7th grade, it was 6.3, and in 8th grade, it was 5.3. There's a reason that those numbers diminish, because there's a ceiling on the test. So the higher kids grow, the harder it is to continue to grow at that rate. So we looked at what our rate was over the past 2 years and found out actually it was pretty impressive, but we wanted to reach a little further, so we increased the rate of growth that we were expecting for students using that measurement tool. Our behavior goal is also tied to PBIS. We implemented our Tier 2 interventions like check-in and check-out and academic check-in and check-out. Last year was our first full year. This year's our second full year. We have the measurement tools in place to measure things like the impact on behavior for the kids who are at the Tier 2 level, or the impact on their academic performance. We don't have a measurement tool right now to measure the sustainability of that by surveying our staff, their perceptions about their ability to carry out these interventions. So our goal was to create that measurement tool, so we would have that data as well. And then our community outreach goal, the last couple of years our outreach goal was connected to service learning and increasing the number of
parent volunteers we had in the building as well as guest speakers. We've continued that goal this year because that's kind of embedded into our practice now, making sure that we're getting out and we're getting guest speakers in front of our kids. But we want to tie it to our academic goal by creating some literacy-based outreach programs. And our goal is to create a minimum of 2 separate outreach programs that will tie literacy to our community outreach efforts.
Who is on this, the Jack Young Middle School Literacy Committee?
Okay, we have building level committees that meet once a month.
Sure.
It's led by our reading specialist, also any teachers who wanted to participate in that. So they've kind of taken that on. I've got 2 staff members who are each going to be in charge of developing one of those projects. And I've got about eight members on that committee.
Okay.
At the high school, our literacy is also being infused across all content areas, and it's really a continuation of what we started to work on last year. We have 2 academic goals related to that. One is academic vocabulary. We want all of our teachers being and thinking of themselves as teachers of literacy, and our teachers are embracing that. The other area is to teach content reading strategies in all subject areas. And so we use our PLC structure to provide our staff professional development in those areas. And you know, academic vocabulary, learning has its own academic vocabulary, and students will be more successful in their courses, will be more successful in taking standardized tests, if this is being infused in all of the content areas. And the same goes for, you know, teaching reading strategies. So this work will continue to go on, and we use our PLC structure for helping all of our staff to become, you know, really trained in these areas. Our PBIS team came to visit with you a month ago and so they went over our PBIS goal with you. I think that was pretty thorough explanation. We're focused on-time behavior, but we also have 3 action teams that are looking at consequence systems here, acknowledgement systems, and how we roll out lesson plans, cool tool lesson plans at the high school. And then our service learning, or our community outreach, is really about service learning, continues to be, as we look at developing down the road a service learning graduation requirement.
The one thing you didn't hear about tonight as the principal spoke is about the amount of collaboration and staff input and teacher leadership that has really been instrumental in bringing these goals here tonight to you. It isn't about each principal sitting down and looking at the data and coming up with these goals. There's a lot of discussion, and those discussions started last year, went through the summer and into the fall. And I think, you know, to provide Peter an example of the richer conversations that go on, because if you just hear this surface conversation, it sounds like it's all numbers, you know, and it's not about kids. But as I recall being over at Al Behrman at one of their staff meetings, one of the teachers was leading a discussion on the impact of poverty on literacy and student wellness. And, you know, that was kind of a starting point for the staff to rally around their students the way that they do and involve families in the process. So, you know, all of this is kind of where we're at, but there's been so much conversation behind the scenes in the buildings about things other than numbers, you know. But I know on the surface it sounds like we're statisticians or something here tonight with percentages and goals, but that's just one example that I thought of when I was over at Al Behrman hearing their conversation about poverty.
I applaud that, and I believe that the systems and structures that we have endeavored to put in under this moniker of cooperative engagement, which is simply a term that strives for an ideal of engagement of all stakeholders to get to the best possible solutions. I know that is in place. I know that is happening. As many of our teachers and retirees spoke earlier, they're going to hold us accountable to those processes and those systems. There are only so many things that this board is able to do, given statutes and the current nature of things. And part of the reason I speak out from this position is to try to remind our community that just because it is this way today does not mean it will be this way tomorrow if they pay attention to what's going on. I bring these issues forth not to point fingers, not to place blame, but to awaken an understanding that the current status does not need to be the future status. Thank you.
The only other thing I will like to just highlight in this is that when I look throughout there, the one word that I see the most often is students. And, you know, again, there are a lot of numbers in here, and obviously that's what we're driving, but I do believe that, yes, we are focusing on what is the most important thing, and that is the students. And again, I applaud, and I can see that that's infused with not only with what's in here, but what the actions of not only you, but our teachers and staff. So, and I thank you very much for that.
Yes, thank you very much. And Glenn, I'm sorry you kind of got stuck in the corner. I certainly could have moved to my left and supported you.
You could be at the kids' table like John.
I apologize for that.
It's like Thanksgiving time.
Yeah,
it's always good to change your point of view.
Okay. Brings us to the portion of the agenda entitled Personnel Recommendations. I am not aware of any approval of resignations to act upon tonight. I am aware of an approval of a new hire, that is the payroll and benefits specialist, Kelly Rudd. Is that correctly pronounced? Board was provided some background in your packet. There was an interview team. I would entertain a motion for that new hire.
So moved. Second.
Entertain a motion by Mortimer, seconded by Cummings. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carried. Brings us then to the approval of long-term subs. There is a third to add. I don't know if board members have it on your sheet. It's 6th grade language arts position, and that is for Sue Gouge. So I would thus entertain the approval of the long-term substitute positions. We can take them all together.
That's a 6th grade social studies position.
That makes more sense. I move to approve all three of them, the Al Behrman, the East, and the 6th grade social studies teacher.
Second.
Any further discussion? Thanks for the clarification on the position at the school.
Wouldn't she be surprised?
Well, it does make more sense considering that's a former social studies teacher.
Hearing no additional discussion, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried, positions approved. Brings us then to the approval of the 2014-15 prep overload compensation for Jennifer Schultz, Ian Crammond, and Mike McGann.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Vedro, seconded by Meering. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Brings us to new business. I'll turn to Chair of Finance, Mr. McNevin, for the approval of the receipts and disbursements.
Move to approve. Second.
Having a motion by McNevin, seconded by Cummings. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carried. Brings us to the approval of the youth options. Again, information provided in the board packet. I would entertain a motion for the approval.
I move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Meering, seconded by Vedro. Any discussion?
Yeah, just the only discussion is that we need to continue to support this option, but we need to continue to review any ways that we can reduce its costs. And
It is state mandated, but it's not a bad mandate, but it is a mandate where we do have some costs that are incurred as a result of it, so.
I would also like to add that in our lower grades, elementary, the reports that we've heard, the focus seems to be on raising those young people who are below the norm upward. The great concern, of course, is what happens to those that are at the norm or above. We have talented and gifted. We have additional focuses to try to address that. By the time they do reach high school, I think it is so important to have this youth options program where those who have the competence and the desire can accrue higher level challenges through our relationships with BooU, and I support this fully. I think it is a very important contribution to our educational system.
Further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Brings us to the discussion of the 2014-15 budget and certification of tax levy. Mr. McNevin, is there any intro from finance?
No, but just wait, this is gonna be good.
Yes.
Setting the table for me.
You bet. We had a very enthusiastic display at finance, it was awesome, so.
Definitely.
We want fireworks too.
I emailed a copy to all board members with a memo that I prepared along with our budget adoption worksheet, revenue limit worksheet, and then a couple of informative documents related to our tax levy.
And just as a parenthetical comment, thank you for that due diligence, and even I could follow. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad I could help. At the Finance Committee, I really went into great detail regarding a lot of these documents. I'm going to do more of a flyover here at the full board, but just want to go through the process a little bit. So the first item that you look at really when you're building a budget is what type of revenues do you have coming in. So something I included within your packet is on page 6 is a revenue limit worksheet. So basically, as a district, the majority of your revenue comes in through the revenue limit formula. They give you some projections.
Is this color one?
Yep, that's the one.
Okay.
They give you some projections in the summer, but your final revenue limit worksheet doesn't really get released until October 15th. So that was released on the 15th, and if you have any questions related to how that worksheet works or how to go through it or anything like that, let me know. I'm happy to go through that with you. After completing the revenue limit worksheet, our total revenue under the cap came in at $28,381,704. Realize that that revenue cap is basically made up of 3 items: state equalization aid, property tax levy, and a very small portion is your computer aid. Our equalization aid from certified by the state is up 3.6% from last year. That is a total of $548,994. Like I said at Finance Committee, that sounds great. Sounds like you're getting a bunch more money, but that's not really the way it works. It's more of a balancing system. So state aid goes up, that means tax levy goes down. So they really balance each other out. So since state equalization aid went up, our Fund 10 levy actually went down. So we're charging less in a property tax levy for our Fund 10 for the fiscal year 14-15. Our Fund 10 levy went down, I have the number here, 2.5% or $315,374. The all fund tax levy, so Fund 10 is our main fund. That's where primarily a lot of our revenues are brought in, a lot of our expenditures are spent out of there. Our all fund levy includes Fund 38, and we don't have a Fund 41, but it would include a Fund 41 if we did. Our all fund tax levy up for adoption tonight is in the amount of $13,432,143. In addition to our main fund, that would also include our non-referendum borrowing, our referendum borrowing, as well as our community service fund that we do have. To determine individual tax amounts, if you go a little bit later on within your packet, the last two sheets are a breakdown by municipality. And then the final sheet within your packet is really more explanatory. It's a document that goes into the tax levy, and it just provides some good information related to it. I'm not going to go through it tonight, but you have it within your packet. I'm also going to post it to our website if you'd like to check it out later. So when you break down all the tax levy information, the amount that we're going to levy comes out to .00892. What that means is for every $1,000 of equalized value in your home, you pay $8.92. This is up 7 cents from July when we had our annual meeting. And again, that's just due to different revenues coming in and finalizing our budget expenditures. So, last step, budget reconciliation. Again, between mid-July and now, we've had different things happen. We've finalized a transportation budget. We've had staff reductions and staff increases between that time. We've had the finalization of our revenue come through. So the budget adoption that you see on pages 2, 3, and 4, that's where we've arrived at tonight. Fund 10 revenue for the 14-15 years projected at $30,718,730, while expenditures are projected at $30,905,513. This does represent a deficit budget, and the administrative team is currently reviewing options for 14-15 to address that deficit, and looking forward to the 15-16 year to see what we can do to address the future years that lie ahead. Total expenditures between all of our funds, so that's 10, 21, 27 special ed, 38 non-referendum borrowing, 39 referendum borrowing, 50 food service, Fund 80 community service. All of those funds together, total expenditures equal $38,311,423. And again, detailed description of that budget is on your pages 2 through 4. So at this point, does anybody have any questions related to the budget?
As far as our, I'm sorry, I caught you. As far as, reviewing our expenditures and, trying to find reductions, we're gonna have another report. When are we gonna get that report?
November 10th, we'll be having a discussion about next year's budget and potential budget reduction options.
So, again, when we always talk these numbers, it's like they see a number. That's not, and nothing. Some numbers are not cast in stone. That's obviously one that isn't.
Oh, correct.
So.
Well, there's a couple numbers that are cast in stone that,
Yes.
I guess, to recap anecdotally, what Jeff has put together in detailed numbers for the board to remember. We have levied the authority allowed, and we are still $186,000 short of operations. We have seen our fund balance fall from $5 million to $2.9 million. It will fall, if all things stay equal, another $186,000. Keep in mind, within this budget is $250,000 of revenue catch-up that we're allowed because of a slight decline in our enrollment. That means we're starting next year in the hole to the tune of $430,000 in the hole next year. We are at a critical point in our fund balance. We have to take a look at all of our spending this year and plan very well for next year because we need to dig ourselves out of where we're at right now. The fund balances, and we made those decisions together. We made some tough choices with that fund balance based on the middle school and some capital projects that needed to get done. But clearly, the 2.9 mark is the lowest we want to be.
And it's under 10%. Typical average is around 15%. So.
And the levy rate, the local levy, is lower than almost all of our neighbors. If we had a couple billion in water parks in our jurisdiction, we'd have a lower levy. But other than that, we are the lowest spending school district in the area. So keep in mind that we do have the lowest property tax.
Any further questions, in particular of Jeff? Care to entertain a motion for the approval?
I will so move.
I will second.
We have a motion by Mr. Cummings, second by Mr. McNevin. Anything further to add in the discussion? Excuse me, discussion?
I would like to ask, once we continue to pare down and pare down and pare down, and pare down and pare down and pare down, are there other recommendations for how to save public education that we ought to be focusing on? I seem to remember this board made a resolution last year to support Dr. Evers' fair funding for public schools. Money comes from the legislature to support public education. I think we ought to be shaking our fists as responsible stewards of our public education system to be able to have the resources to support what our children need, not just continue to cut. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Hearing none, those in favor of the certification of the tax levy moving forward, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Motion carried, yes, thank you. Brings us then to the discussion and the approval of the post-employment benefits options, discussion that the full board took up at our last board meeting. The decision at that time was to take an opportunity for the board to look things over, ask and get answers to questions that either we had or were presented to us by any of the affected employees or general public in particular. So with that having been said, I would leave it up to the board as to if you want to have a motion to move forward at this point, or if you want to have a discussion first.
I prefer a discussion. I just would like to ask what we heard from our faculty, staff, in regards to what their hopes and expectations are versus what this document lays out. If somebody could explain that to me and what modifications might be able to be made and what the costs of those might be, I'd be very happy to
Well,
hear.
some feedback that we did get from teachers was questioning the age eligibility for Tier 2, going from 55 to 57. I know that we checked into that somewhat. The tiered benefit is what it is, regardless if they're 55 or 57, so I don't know if that is a potential, compromise that the board would consider with keeping the retirement age at 55 for Tier 2 for those who might be in a position where they would want to retire at 55. I'm not sure if that's what you were asking, Peter, but.
Yeah, I guess I hear, from the comments that were made about cooperative engagement
And just to reiterate too, for those that don't have the history behind this, last year the board made a commitment to not change the current benefit for this year's eligible retirees. There was interaction, there was dialogue, there was conversations that took place last year on that, I know directly with the board.
So I mean, this isn't new in per se that we have conversations saying that, yeah, last year, we said we're not addressing it last year, but we are going to have to address this sometime in the future. And that future wasn't going to be 3, 4, or 5 years. We had to address it now. And so it wasn't that, it has been just been brought up in the last 2 weeks. It's been brought up over the last
Right.
year.
And the committee that was referenced is the board's personnel committee, who met in the spring to hear about the actuarial study. That was really the majority of the conversation that took place with KVC, was talking about the impact and the liability to the district years out, based on the current status of benefits. Then,
That's the recent meeting,
that was the meeting last spring.
last
where-
spring. So
yeah.
there was a meeting last spring that discussed these.
With the personnel.
Well,
yeah,
there was
committee. It was open meeting.
There was a series of meetings.
Sure.
There was a collective 8 or 10 hours that went into the recommendation that we had to bring forth at the last board meeting.
With administration, board members, and teachers and staff.
The committee's the one, we prioritized what was important
Sure.
to the committee
Sure.
to retain.
Mhm.
Moving forward, I think the largest eye-opening part of that was the number that you, before our meeting tonight, Doug pointed out, that's on your
Oh, yeah.
piece of paper.
Sure.
The bottom line, to me as a committee member, was the direction that we were headed is not sustainable. Sure, this board can sustain it. We can sustain it for a couple more years. We can sustain it for a couple more boards, but at some point it was not sustainable. And we had a commitment, the full board made a commitment to current employees that we were going to, in essence, not take anything away from those that were planning on retiring.
Mhm.
So we retained the benefits moving forward for not only last year, but also for those that are going to retire for this year, or
Mhm.
potentially retire for this year. It's a very difficult, emotional, I can sympathize with everybody that was here to speak tonight. If I was in their shoes, I probably would have done the same thing. But I think it needs to be said that, this didn't come out of nowhere. The meetings that we had were public meetings. I mean, they were committee meetings that were in the public. It was agendized as to what the discussion was going to be, and we have a very difficult decision that we need to make. There's been a lot of time invested in getting to what we have before us. The difference between the 55 and the 57, which is affecting only tier 2 and transition 1 and transition 2, which is tier 2 and 3? Is that where that change would be? The numbers that I saw, it's not a deal breaker to me. I'm only speaking for myself. I mean, if that would, help the situation, I don't think that that's where the issue is. And I would say that if I were in their shoes, I would look at it from the same angle. We have different shoes, different hats to wear, and that's to make sure that this district is financially solvent for years to come. Not 10 years from now that somebody looks back and what did the board do in 2014-15 when they had an opportunity to address these concerns?
I think the other thing that I heard from the personnel committee is that they wanted to incrementally make these changes. And this is for teachers and administrators as well.
Correct.
And I think, that's easier to receive when those are incremental changes. And in checking with districts around us, I mean, that was part of the consultant's initial presentation, was saying, here's what some districts are doing and checking in our region. There are districts around us that are no longer offering any post-employment benefits to new hires.
Well, let's
And
talk
we
about
don't
that
want to
for a
go
bit.
there. I mean, we want to continue to offer a benefit that they could even potentially leave our district with and take with them. And they could not only use it for health savings, but they could use it for other needs that they have.
It is their benefit.
It would be their benefit.
Yeah, it is not the school districts, because once we say, here it is, it's
No,
a
no,
pool.
no, no, it's an
It-
earned benefit.
Earned.
It's-
I know, yes.
Well,
Yeah, thank you.
it's,
Clarify.
it's earned over time. I guess to back up a step with the committee, and Peter, to answer your first question, what can be done? Anything can be done. You can change or alter any one of these. This is a long-term issue that got built up and it's solved over long-term. There's a long-term solution that's being presented. One of the philosophies of the committee at the outset was we felt there should be something for all as far as post-retirement benefit for healthcare, rather than adopting what some of our neighbors have done, which is stopping all the cessation of all benefits starting, immediately next year and capping everybody where you're at, that is certainly probably one of the easiest ways to go about it because it impacts, the impact is nominal for those that are here. It affects greatly everybody coming in through the door. And we felt that recruitment and retention requires involvement, and that meant continuing some type of benefit. And that's why we looked at a tiered system. Each tweet, I've had correspondence from people via email and phone calls about it, and the ones that I've had are very specific to their benefit, which makes sense. This impacts me this way. Can this be changed? Can this be altered? The only word of caution is when we start addressing each individual concern, it will essentially change the structure of what has been proposed.
When we had our conversations regarding the health insurance benefit, and you presented, along with Dean, the fact that 88% of our enrollees utilize the Dean network, even though the benefit that we as a district and they pay for was above and beyond. And for me, that became a very significant element to balance the benefit which at a certain point we were able to provide and recognized we could no longer provide in the way in which we provided it. And in that conversation, we did, I believe what we're trying to do here is to find a workable, incremental middle ground that does not put the people who are closest to retiring or closest to an issue to deal with a significant change. We looked at tiered systems, and my question is simply the same. I want to ensure that when we have to address the people who spoke to us, we can say the same thing that we said about our health insurance, I think. That given the current conditions, the principles that were involved were to ensure that everyone has a benefit as opposed to just a few, and that those who are closest to using that benefit have a window to take advantage of that benefit, and then to segment to the best of our ability further down.
And I believe we tried to incorporate those elements.
I believe we did as well.
And the reason why is because you've maintained the health insurance policy that's there. Clearly, one of the objectives of the plan is to go and get away from buying future health care coverage at some unknown cost. However, I think we all understand the escalators in the industry. And so we're trying to figure out what those are. We know that we've accrued an $8 million liability that we've funded $315,000 of. And by switching it over from a defined benefit to a defined contribution, it allows us to understand the numbers and to estimate and project those numbers and to fund. And one of the things the committee talked about is you can fund these in different ways. And the committee said we want to fund it right away. And this goes back to Doug's question. Because this is moving away from 4 to 6 years of complete health care coverage to a funded benefit that is transportable by you. Now you start earning it a little bit later, okay? And you gain percentage the longer you are, that eventually you become fully vested in that benefit and can take it with you. And those are the dollars that we contribute. You do have an opportunity to contribute your own dollars, and those are always 100% vested. So there is a vesting schedule that kicks in, but when I just didn't want somebody to think that, wait a minute, you said that there's, this is a benefit that you provide and we provide immediately. Sure, we do, we recognize that benefit, but there is a vesting schedule tied to it. And that's designed to encourage longevity. So I feel that when the committee looked at honoring the health insurance provision by being able to retire and keep that policy they've got, and yes, do some of them lose a year of coverage? Yes. Do some of them have to reach a certain age of retirement? I mean, part of the reason why it went from 55 to 57 is more people are retiring later. That 57 is a very common number according to the actuary. The other thing is this benefit was designed to, at least anecdotally, I feel it was designed, I wasn't there when it was created, to bridge that gap between retirement and between employment and Medicare. And so you've now got that medical coverage that gets you there. Well, if you start that at 55 and Medicare continues to advance, and we shorten that gap, you're going to end up short. So changing that age is, you'd have to run the numbers, just like any modification, you've got to run the numbers and see how it impacts it. And the actuary's happy to do that, but for me, the benefit is designed to get them from that employment age to that Medicare age. Because one of the other modifications is you must start to use the benefit when you retire, okay? You can't defer the benefit for 5 or 6 years and then start that benefit.
Any other comments?
Well, like this first one with a grandfather, at age 55, then you get, it sounds like you get the medical premium for 4 years, right? So that makes you 59.
Depending on your tenure.
Okay, right. But
Some
25.
are 4, some are 6.
Right, but at 4 years, you aren't gonna be eligible for Medicare or anything, right? Because you don't want to be 59 years old.
Right, but we do have married couples, and if they retire this year under the current benefit, they still can defer the benefit. So it could take somebody out to that span, depending on their age.
So somebody could obviously retire, switch from their health insurance to their spouse's health insurance that's existing with the district. Keep that until that spouse retires.
I understand that.
And then add on and defer until. And that's a practice that is very hard to measure. That's a practice that's very hard to cost. And that's a practice that's hard to pay for.
Is this, I'm thinking, is this going to, you're saying other districts around have canceled their insurance or whatever, have a policy such as this. Is this going to cause some of our teachers or employees, whatever you want to call them, the tendency to go someplace else?
I think that certainly is possible, but all I can say is that from what we looked at, what was presented to us, and what we looked at as a committee to come up with this is a hybrid of everything that we were shown. This isn't anybody else's plan from my recollection. These were points that we as a committee said we want to address this. This is important to us. We need to make sure this is taken care of. We need to make sure we're not taking anything away from anybody that's retiring this year. That's what went into the tiered grid. There isn't anybody around us that has this exact plan. There are some districts that have done nothing thus far, that are continuing the same thing they've been doing in the past, status quo. There are other districts, and in the examples that we were shown, because of contractual obligations, the names of the districts were not always shown to us. But as Sean said, there are some districts that for a number of reasons, one of which may have been financial immediate concerns, just stopped. So I'm not sure, it depends upon what it's a comparison to, because I don't, and what it is today, what the comparison is today to Wanakee or to some other district, that comparison may change next year, the year after that. I think that's just the way that things are in the environment today as far as
Well, that
healthcare
wa-
benefits and education field.
That was my next question. We always compare Baraboo with all the other schools in the Badger North. So what do the other schools in the Badger North have? Did anybody check on that?
Don't talk about Wanakee?
I said, well, we checked with our neighbors around us. There is a district that has had the tiered system in place for over 2 years. There's another neighbor to our east who they do not provide any post-employment for any new hires. And we checked with DeForest.
That's a newer policy probably with them.
Newer, but not brand new, not this
Okay.
year. And we checked with DeForest. Jeff's familiar with Wanakee's.
Be speculating if I said that.
So I think what Kevin is saying, if people haven't made changes, they're heading down that track. And we do want to make sure that we maintain competitive benefits. But as we look at the incentives that eventually the board is providing, it really is providing that incentive for that matching contribution as well. And I think as a district, you know, we need to provide resources to our employees so that they understand how to save for retirement from the day they start working and not waiting till the last few years. And we do have employees who do that. They make significant contributions to their 403B. So, you know, that is moving too all the time. In checking with some of the districts around us, they're having the same discussions that you as a board are having right now.
I think that is certainly something that I, as a committee member, that has a value, that has a weight, the comparative, what other districts are doing. The bottom line is, we need to, for this district to survive, it needed to change. It had to change. And I think as hard as it is for some to take in, you know, we did it in an incremental way, trying not to affect those that are would immediately be affected. And I think that the plan, the tiered plan, is in the benefit of the district moving forward. That's not to say that something may have to be tweaked, something may have to be changed if law requires us to do so. That's something we don't know. You know, if something happens with the Affordable Care Act that we're contrary to, or something needs to be tweaked, you know, there's an addendum, appendix, that talks about notwithstanding the provisions of the paragraph above, which basically talks about the potential to have to change to meet legal obligations, that nothing is intended to limit the board's authority to unilaterally change the post-employment benefit in any way at any time for any reason. Point being, it can be changed. I think, you know, we need to take, you know, we need to take the opportunity that we have to start, put something on paper, implement it.
And again, we can always, yeah, things can always change, but I'm saying, given the present situation and the circumstances and the situation that we have, that yes, that we go ahead and approve this. Obviously, things can change. I mean, the state and the federal government, everybody can change the whole rule book. And,
correct.
But we can't be saying, well, tomorrow we're going to do something different if nothing else has changed. We have to make a commitment to a plan and move ahead on that. But obviously, we have to have options just in case things were to occur later on down the line.
Well, the agenda item for tonight deals specifically with, as it's agendized, well, actually it's talking about post-employment benefit options in general, but we need to deal with the post-employment changes for administrators and our directors in another way because of the contractual obligations that we have. That is a commitment that the board has made. I know that the administrators and directors know that that discussion is going to happen. So it's a two-step, two-tiered approach to getting to where we need to be. This being the first step that we need to take,
Yep.
or I believe we need to take.
Yeah. They're separate but tied together discussions, even though, but
Correct.
again, we have to approve one, the other one has to be
One
handled.
fiscal note, if it was looking like we were doing this to save money, certainly in the short run, that is not the case. Changing this plan in this way costs the district money over the next 5 years. It impacts the budget in a negative fashion. It's a long-term solution, obviously, but the short-term impact is this is going to cost us, because now we have to not only maintain our existing plan in some form or fashion, but now you have to start funding the new hires immediately. So this could have been crafted to save the district some money, especially in the short run. And certainly that decision did not go down that way.
I see in tier 2 there, Kevin, where the district will contribute so much to the single-family health insurance. Now, what happens if health insurance goes up, which it probably will? Is that still going to stay the same?
The 74, oh, I can't see the
Capped
number.
at $1.
74, 75,
Yeah,
single, and
it's
16.
capped it is capped at a dollar amount.
So if insurance goes up, that isn't going to change.
Correct, it is not gonna change. That was one of the purposes of trying to get a handle on what the obligations were, rather than leaving them as unknowns, future dollar figure to be stuck in here, whatever the case might be. So to answer your question, yes, that is capped at $74.75 for a single and $16,950 for a family.
But this could be renegotiated in a year or two or whenever.
Well, I don't want to have my statement lead anybody to believe, including myself, that this is something that we're gonna continually change. I just want it to be known that there is an opportunity, if it's the board's decision to change, whether it be an age requirement or contribution requirement, whatever, we can do that. I'm not suggesting that once a year we're gonna change stuff that's on here, because I think there's a lot of, how would I put it, there's a lot of record keeping that's going to go into this, and I don't think you want to keep readjusting what you're record keeping and what the dates, and it's going to be difficult to implement this, I think, to begin with. One of the questions that came up, and I just want to make sure my answer is correct, when it talks about the age, that is the age as of December the 31st, the eligibility age?
Correct. In the year in which they retire.
In the year in which they retire. You know, so that we don't have somebody that says, well, I'm 2 days this side or 2 days that side of you know. So there's going to have to be, and I know that there is a plan to have discussions to you know, if you have people that are specifically in transition group 1, or that's where they plan to be, to have a discussion about what does it all mean? Because obviously not every question is answered in the paragraph that explains each tier.
I think the board got a copy of that notice that I went out to staff that December 6th, 4th, that first week in December, we'll hold an informational session based on any changes that the board makes, as well as other questions that typically come up from eligible retirees. And we're gonna hold several sessions, one targeted for that first group, and then another session for teachers that might be in the other tiers.
When are you going to do this?
December 4th or 6th.
December 4th.
December 4th. Spouses too are welcome to attend. Even if people aren't eligible for retirement, they're still welcome to come in here. And we have to send out official notices anyway to those that are eligible, so there won't be any question whether or not someone is eligible to retire this year. We do that annually.
And what did you say, you have to be 55 within the year you're going to retire, or was it by December 1st? When do you have to be 55?
By the end of the year in which you retire. Correct?
Correct.
So in essence, it could be 54.
Right.
And retire. If you're 55 in November, that would qualify. This also, if the board's decision tonight is to move forward and to approve the post-employment benefits change, this would be incorporated into the handbook as far as revisions, so that's where going to be implemented through the handbook, I guess, is how I'm trying to say it.
I don't know if this question is appropriate or not, but what are you going to do with custodians and secretaries? The insurance going to be the same, or it's just another topic that you would discuss?
That really has nothing to do with this.
Doesn't impact.
Yeah, it doesn't impact this, it
Doesn't impact this,
doesn't impact this.
but are you going to have a discussion with them also?
As far as post-employment benefits?
Yeah.
Are they eligible for,
Well, they're eligible for a sick leave payout at this point.
yeah, just sick leave payout, not premiums paid after retirement?
And I think those issues, at least for the short term, have been dealt with in the handbook.
Right.
There's a group that wasn't clarified in the handbook last year, which now is, which was our directors.
There were a select group of employees who weren't contractual, but they really didn't fit into the other groups
Yeah.
either.
I don't know if that, I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but
No, that's fine.
Yeah, it doesn't impact their sick leave payout, custodians or secretaries, and that's the benefit that they receive upon retirement.
Is the board prepared to entertain a motion to move the post-retirement benefits forward and make the modifications and revisions to the handbook language that would reflect the change?
Well, to get things rolling, I will make that motion to approve that.
So we have a motion, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Do we have any additional discussion? And it's, somewhat unfortunate that Ms. Riley had obligations tonight. She's at some conference, I believe, presenting somewhere, but she was part of the committee and isn't able to partake in our discussion tonight because I think as a member of that committee, it would have added to our discussion.
Who are the members of the committee? Personnel?
Mr. McNevin, myself, and Ms. Riley, yes.
Okay.
Peter was on the committee, but I don't think Peter was part of any of the discussions that started with this particular topic.
Okay.
And I would just like to say I honor the work that the committee has done, and I have always appreciated the depth of concern and consideration that have gone into these difficult decisions. Everybody knows, I just think there are larger battles to fight than just within our own cohort, if you will, to try to solve these problems.
Any further discussion? Having a motion and a second, those in favor of the resolution and the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
No, Mr. Mortimer's opposition. The motion would pass 5-1. One item left on our agenda for tonight, and that is the approval of the QTI contract for post-employment benefits records for prior employees. There was background provided. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Having a motion by Mr. McNevin and a second by Mr. Mearing. Any discussion?
Would Mr. Hubble explain this again, please?
Yes, I think.
What the person is.
I'm sorry?
What the person's,
Role
let's
will
say,
be?
qualification or what the role is, yes.
Definitely. I think it goes back to what Mr. Vodak referred to earlier when he was talking about the record keeping that will be necessary to administer the benefit that the board just approved. Looking back 7 or 8 years, we probably had, I haven't counted them up, probably 4 to 6 different post-employment benefits with dozens of retirees with, some of them have a Medicare cutoff, some of them don't, some of them there's a cash payout option, some of them it's just health insurance, some of them, and there are different amounts that the district contributes versus what the retiree contributes. Also add to the mix, there are different individuals who have administered these benefits. First we had an accountant doing it, and then another accountant, and then a business manager. In the mix there, at one point there was a secretary who was involved. and then it got transferred over to Human Resources over the summer. What we really need for record-keeping purposes is somebody to bring it all together into one uniform document or system where we all can trust the numbers. So this benefit, which is assuredly millions of dollars, we all can look at and say, yes, we're confident these numbers are accurate, and we're confident that administering this going forward, everything is correct.
So then this person that you want to hire is going to, what, either teach you or Jeff or somebody, or bring this all up to date, and then we won't have to do this again, then you people should be able to take care of it, is that correct?
That is the goal, yes. The goal is to essentially, I don't want to say correct, but in some cases perhaps correct, confirm that the data that we have is accurate, bring uniformity to these different spreadsheets that exist, and also a system and help establish a system so that moving forward, yes, can be administered not just by us, but by anybody who may step into the role at some point in the future. There'll be one system in place, everything will be correct, and it'll, I don't want to say operate on its own, but it'll be much more efficient.
Okay, when this person gets done, whose responsibility at the administration building is this going to be?
I believe
Or is
it
it
will
going to be a
mine.
combination?
At the end of the day, I guess the buck stops with me. I'm going to get some help from the accounts receivable individual, for example, who's going to receive the checks from the retirees. And then I'll probably get some help from, other individuals as well. At the end of the day, though, I would be responsible.
But then I would assume sometime in the future, you should cross-train somebody, so when we get rid of you.
I think that's an outstanding
You know what I
idea.
mean.
No, absolutely. And I have somebody in mind.
Like starting immediately.
But
That's not in this proposal.
when and if you retire,
Absolutely.
then somebody should be able to step into that
No,
role.
I 100% agree, and I will, I nominate Mr. Prefer for that role.
Thank you for the nomination.
Boy, did you pick the wrong hot seat to sit
Spreading
in?
the cheer.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Further questions?
Craig, the QTI group has experience in this arena.
I do not have personal experience with the QTI group other than what my conversations with them. It's my understanding that they can bring us somebody who has the experience that we want. And not only that, we have the opportunity to interview the individual. And if the person isn't working out at any point, we can say, it's just not working, can you bring us somebody else?
It's a temporary situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what their job is, to handle these type of situations.
Because it is a temporary situation and because this area is so specialized, I just want to encourage us to ensure the fact that we are actively involved in the process of
Absolutely.
selecting and vetting someone, because we do have a lot of variation, and hopefully we'll be able to find someone who has some background and experience in this.
Having a motion, a second, and discussion. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Having a motion and a second to adjourn. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?